Welcome back to the final team selection for blank Gameweek 29 in FPL. There's a lot to discuss. Ollie Watkins came off injured in the Europa Conference League in that 4-0 victory over Ajax. I'll be talking about the latest updates regarding him. Could have scored a brace in the Europa League and now he'll become a more popular option for the free hit in blank Gameweek 29. I'll be discussing a few changes to that squad and what ultimately determines the best team for Gameweek 29 specifically, and also talking about the best replacements for Ollie Watkins if he isn't available for this weekend's game as well. I also discuss the Gameweek 28 performance and give you the updates on my remaining players and ultimately whether I got a green or red arrow. There's so much to talk about in this video, so be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. And this video is available in podcast format. Leave a 5-star review on Spotify and also Amazon Music and follow me on those platforms. There's a link to my Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, the Discord server, the FPL League, Drafthound, and much more. So be sure to check all of that out. All the links are in the description below. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. In Fantasy Premier League, there hasn't been a particular standout in the goalkeeper position. Areola offers the best value, and in terms of points per match, it's Alisson, Raya, and Areola as the top 3 goalkeepers in the game. But I have to say with Areola, he has been very disappointing, and once he got that 13-point haul in Gameweek 27, I had no hopes for him in double Gameweek 28. It proved to be the case, and West Ham were 2-0 down. They made a late comeback, but were only able to salvage a point in the end. And ultimately, going into Gameweek 29, I have no other choice really, or I would have had no other choice than to go with Areola, but thankfully on the free hit we can go for other goalkeepers who maybe aren't as big FPL trolls as the Frenchman, but for his price he offers tremendous value, there's no denying that. But I'm just sick to death of Areola, and he's one of the FPL trolls of my season. There were 2 midfielders who carried my FPL team up until that Wednesday. Heung-min Son getting that goal and 2 assists against Aston Villa and 17 points overall. And now he faces Fulham away in Gameweek 29. He's going to be the most popular captaincy option and by some distance as well. My second midfielder was Cole Palmer with 13 points on Monday night against Newcastle. He has been incredible this season. He's averaging almost 6 points per game and he started this campaign at 5 million in terms of price. He has been sensational on penalties, also from open play. He's adding more goals and assists, and I think he's going to be a great FPL option for seasons to come. And my other 2 midfielders did blank. Phil Foden against Liverpool, he didn't do much in that game, and even Bukayo Saka was quite underwhelming in the Champions League as well. His performance was very concerning, but everyone has their off days, and I do expect Saka to be a season-long hold, as I discussed in my trans tips video. But ultimately, as you can see up until this point, it's the double Gameweek defenders, Son and Palmer, who've been carrying my FPL team. The first yellow flag of my starting 11 is Ollie Watkins, but Anthony Gordon, who was on my bench, he's another one who picked up an injury against Chelsea, but he was called up to the England squad, so things are looking quite positive with Anthony Gordon, with initial reports suggesting he could be out for several months, maybe even 6 to 7, so let's see if we get any more clarification on the injuries to Anthony Gordon and Ollie Watkins. But we did get an update by Unai Emery after the game against Ajax, and it wasn't too shabby, as I'll talk about very soon. My other 2 forwards included Solanke, who I bought for a hit, and of course I did sell him a few weeks ago back in double Gameweek 25, and that didn't turn out the right way. Ultimately, I've lost a lot of points from my forward transfers, but Solanke did the job in the end. He got that all-important first goal for Bournemouth to kickstart that comeback, and he got 2 bonus points in the end. So ultimately, those that did go for the Solanke triple captaincy, a decent return with 8 points, 24 overall with the triple captaincy points added on, and Erling Haaland got 10 back in double Gameweek 25. So not a big difference, but of course, the 2 most popular triple captains have delivered this season, and there's plenty more opportunities to come if you haven't used it up until this point. My final forward was Erling Haaland, who was very disappointing in that game against Liverpool. His record at Anfield during his time at Man City doesn't make great reading, but only 2 appearances, of course, very small sample size, and ultimately that Man City Liverpool game was a very tight, open-ended game to be fair, but not much to separate the 2 sides. Man City better in the first half, and then Liverpool dominated the second and arguably deserved to win in the end. But that was my starting 11 for double Gameweek 28. A lot more shine added to it after Doughty, Zabani and Solanke all returned in the second game of double Gameweek 28. Despite taking a -8 hit, I got 63 points for the game week, and that was enough to secure a 60,000 green arrow. So not too shabby. I'm now up to 294k in the world, and I've got over 1,700 points for the season. I captained Solanke like many of you did, and ultimately it was a decent week all things considered. I was fearing the worst after I sold Estupinian. He kept the clean sheet, and of course Pedro Porro got 7 points on my bench, but not too shabby. I do have some injury concerns about Watkins and Gordon going into Game Week 30, as I'll discuss later in this video. But now let's talk about some updates to my free hit team, and consequently the best free hit you can assemble for blank Game Week 29. Between the sticks, nothing has changed. I'd still go for Flecken, but it is quite a close call between him and Areola. I ultimately don't expect many clean sheets, if any, at all in this blank game week. Only 4 fixtures and 8 teams featuring, and I am going for Flecken based on the clean sheet chances against Burnley. I would probably put Brentford first in terms of the best chance of keeping a clean sheet, but I don't trust them per se. Brentford have a pretty poor record. They're not winning enough football matches. They're in that relegation battle, and they are conceding quite a lot of goals. I know against the likes of Arsenal, Man City, they've kept things tight and really pushed them to the limit, but in other games against the so-called weaker opposition, Brentford haven't been keeping that many clean sheets or winning enough games to have a lot of confidence in them. But right now, I've got Flecken in goal. If you have any other alternative suggestions for each position, but especially for the goalkeeper, be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. Most people who are using the free hit this week are going to go for the exact same back three, which includes Pedro Porro. If you want to go a little bit different though, I would also recommend Udogie or Romero for this game specifically. But in terms of defenders from other teams, so Nottingham Forest, West Ham, Aston Villa, Fulham, there's not many that really spring to mind, and I'm really struggling to build that 5-man defence for my 15-man squad, and 2 of them will sit on the bench. There's no way I'm starting 4 defenders in blank Game Week 29. My second defender is Reguilón, who's currently flagged, but Thomas Frank was very positive and he said he should be available for that game against Burnley, and he said it once again in the press conference yesterday. So things are looking quite positive for Reguilón, and I would also consider a double up in Brentford defensively, but the team itself and their defensive record isn't particularly great. I think the underlying numbers defensively are quite decent, so maybe they are due a clean sheet, so to speak. And Burnley aren't a reliable team, but they cause West Ham problems in double Game Week 28. And in terms of doubling up on any defence this week, you'd probably argue that Spurs is the best one to do so, but you'd want to have 2 attackers, especially in the midfield area, and that's where you have to settle for 1 defender or Vicario in goal, and my preference would be the Spaniard, Pedro Porro in that case, and I think Reguilón has some attacking potential as well. The last defender is Alfie Doughty. I think Luton Town are just absolutely shocking defensively. They showed it against Bournemouth after being 3-0 up, but Doughty has that assist threat from open play and set pieces, and that's why he makes it into this team. But you could make a case that Nottingham Forest are the favourites to win that crucial relegation battle between Luton Town and Nottingham Forest. Arguably the best pick in blank Game Week 29 is Heung-min Son, and he's a great option for Game Week 30 as well. And I think Son is someone you'd want to keep up until Game Week 34 at the very least, if you're able to. But I think a few weeks down the line, we might be considering moves like Son to Foden, especially if you sell Foden right now and you're looking to maybe navigate some of the fixtures that way, because Tottenham have great fixtures until Game Week 34, but then from that point onwards, they might have some doubles later in the season, but some of the games coming up are woeful. Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, Man City at home, and Liverpool away. That's all back-to-back, not in that particular order per se, but that is a terrible run of fixtures for Spurs. But in the meantime, it's all about blank Game Week 29 and the free here, and Heung-min Son, just buy him. If you haven't already, I think Son is a must-have for this game week. The same goes for James Maddison, who hasn't blanked away from home this season, and in Craven Cottage during his time in the Premier League, he has never blanked in that stadium as well. There's a lot to like with Maddison this week. I'd also put him as a firm captaincy contender if you want to go differential and not captain Son like many people will be doing. The Maddison could be a great differential who is going to make the difference for you and your overall rank. The third midfielder also keeps his place from the free hit team video and also the original team selection. That's Jarrod Bowen with 5 goals in 11 appearances against Aston Villa. He has a decent record against them, and Jarrod Bowen scored in that 5-0 win over Freiburg as West Ham made that comeback in the Europa League to progress to the next round. The 2 midfielders next up include Bailey away to West Ham, and he scored against Ajax in that 4-0 victory for Aston Villa, and ultimately between him and Douglas Luiz it's so difficult, and in home matches I'd always favour Douglas Luiz, but away from home I think Bailey has the edge, and this could certainly change by the way. Both Bailey and Douglas Luiz were subbed off early in that victory over Ajax, so I don't have any concerns about Bailey being benched. It's it's a crucial game for Aston Villa to bounce back after that very disappointing 4-0 defeat to Tottenham Hotspur last weekend. So I am going for Bailey right now, but this could change to Morgan Gibbs-White or Douglas Luiz. That's still not set in stone. Even Kudus, after that brace against Freiburg, is under consideration for a midfielder slot in my team. But the fifth and final midfielder, who was also in my original free hit team video, but he was on the bench, this time he makes it into the starting 11, and that is Anthony Elanga. For some reason, he was benched against Brighton in Gameweek 28. I think that was more of a tactical thing from Nuno Espirito Santo, but Elanga got 9 points and 2 assists in the reverse fixture against Luton Town earlier this season. And Chris Wood up front got 13 points and a brace, and I think Nottingham Forest were 2-0 down at that stage, and they made that comeback against Luton Town. So I think Elanga, Chris Wood, Gibbs-White could certainly be good options for the free hit in blank Gameweek 29, and even for those of you that are looking for 1 week punts of your normal transfers and a -4 hit. Wissa's getting a lot of love in the comment section on my recent videos, but I'm still going to go for Ivan Toney, who has blanked in 4 consecutive games, but I'm backing him to break that goal-scoring drought against Burnley. I'm very confident he'll do the job. Now, Wissa has done very well in recent games, scoring in 3 consecutive matches, but he's only getting 5 or 6 pointers. Now, it's worth mentioning Wissa did score against Burnley in the reverse fixture earlier this season, and he got 8 points, so Wissa's certainly capable of a decent return, and if you want a differential, Wissa over Toney could certainly be that pick for you who makes that difference. You could even go for Toney and Wissa up front, but in terms of Ollie Watkins, am I still going to go for him on the free hit? Yes, I am. He's currently flagged, but Unai Emery provided a firm update after the win over Ajax, and he said Watkins only suffered a cut. He could be available for Sunday, but it's only a cut. We'll wait and see tomorrow and Saturday. We are speaking before each match about how important Ollie Watkins is. If you're asking me, I think Watkins will be available, so if you aren't free hitting, I'd still keep Ollie Watkins, of course, there's no doubt about it, and he's definitely going to be available for Gameweek 30 in my opinion. There's a couple of weeks until then. We've got an international break in between, and for Gameweek 29 specifically, there is obviously going to be running it close. It might be a risk, but I'd still go for Ollie Watkins on the free hit and just have a good option on your bench, whether a midfielder or a forward who's ready to come in and do the job. And that's where the likes of Kudus, Chris Wood, Gibbs-White, and also Douglas Luiz come into play. Even Wissa, any of those options are more than good enough to be on your bench and replace Ollie Watkins if needed, because the Aston Villa talisman will either start or not play at all. I've made slight changes to my bench, but Areola remains there. I've got Cole Tomara's first on my bench, Soufal and Murillo, so it's quite decent. But in terms of defenders, like I said, I'm really struggling to get those 5 defenders picked because I think only 3 options look quite promising this week. You could argue a Doggy and Romero too, but you can't have more than 3 Spurs players, of course. Otherwise, I probably would go for a Doggy or Romero as well. And it's so strange for a free hit team to include 2 yellow flag players in Reguilón and Ollie Watkins, but I'm backing both of them to play, especially Reguilón. Thomas Frank has been very positive all week about him, and he trained since Tuesday, so things are looking very promising for the Spaniard. With Ollie Watkins, we might get some updates before the deadline, during the deadline stream, so be sure to tune in for that, and we can also then finalize our teams and make sure that everything is set in order. The same goes for the captaincy, and I have gone for Heung-min Son right now, but in my original team selection, I did go for James Maddison, so it's a question of being different and playing it a bit maybe safe in the case of Heung-min Son, protecting rank, and also going for the template sort of pick, but it kind of goes both ways. I think Heung-min Son has a far higher ceiling than Maddison, but I think Maddison's floor is arguably higher in terms of he's more likely to return than Heung-min Son, because like I said, Maddison hasn't blanked away from home all season, and at Craven Cottage in the Premier League, no blanks whatsoever during his time at Leicester. There's a lot to consider, of course. Both of them returned against Fulham back in Gameweek 9, and it took another 19 game weeks for Maddison to score his next Premier League goal. In terms of alternatives for the captaincy, Bowen, Toney and Watkins remain the other essentials for blank Gameweek 29 and thus best captaincy options. But if I'm also looking at some other things to determine during the deadline stream, it's the captaincy, which isn't fully locked in. My starting 11, do I start Elanga or Morris? I'm also considering some changes in these areas for the midfield and forward line, so Gibbs-White, Chris Wood, and a few other options are also entering the thought process here. Even Kudus as well is a good shout. Douglas Luiz, despite being away from home, got 15 points against West Ham earlier this season. I think the goalkeeper and defensive line is quite locked in, but the midfield and forward line is certainly subject to changes. I'm now going to head over to Drafthound and see what their updated best free hit team is, and then use fpl.team to discuss some alternative plans and some contingencies just in case Ollie Watkins isn't available for blank Gameweek 29. There is a link to Drafthound in the description below. If you become a pro paid tier member, you can gain access to all of these tools and see the best free hit team and wildcard for every single game week. Now, they have the best replacements lined up for Ollie Watkins for Gameweek 29 specifically, and they include Morris, Werner, and Fofana from Burnley, who scored in Gameweek 28. And not only that, it was a stunning goal, to say the least. But they have gone for Areola in goal, a back three of Doughty, Reguilón, and Ruslev, a midfield five of Son, Bowen, Maddison, Douglas Luiz, and Bailey, and that front two of Morris and Werner. The bench includes Sells, Fofana, and a few other players there like Mengi, but I'm not particularly interested in some of those bench options, particularly those from Burnley. And ultimately their expected points is 57.1 with that free hit team, but they still suggest Watkins. Of course, he's got 6.2 expected points against West Ham, but they've gone for this starting 11 just in case Watkins misses out, and they provide you the best replacements for him. So I think it's a quite decent list there. Werner could be an interesting shout. He has been in good form recently. Of course, against Crystal Palace, he was important in getting that victory despite some big misses during that match. But I'm going to now head over to fpl.team and discuss my own suggestions for the best Watkins replacements just in case. But I think the best thing to do for free hitters and non-free hitters is to keep Watkins. And of course, if you've got that luxury of some good options on your bench, just ensure you have a decent forward or midfielder first on your bench ready to come on just in case Watkins isn't available. There is a substantial decrease in terms of expected points according to fpl.team with no Ollie Watkins, but for me the best replacements for him include Tony, Morris, Chris Wood, and Wissa. Those are the four best forwards to replace him, mainly for this game week specifically. In terms of the long term, I think Ivan Toney is the only one to really replace him because he has good fixtures until the end of the season, and he could do very well in game week 30 and 31, and not just for game week 29 specifically. But the expected points is 51.6. With Ollie Watkins, it does increase to around 54. So there is a massive difference there, and I'd keep Ollie Watkins, as I've mentioned earlier. But looking ahead to game week 30, which will be a problem for me personally because I won't be able to afford Salah. Those that sold Haaland to Morris, you might be regretting it now, but if Morris gets the return in game week 29, you save the free here and you can buy back Salah in game week 30. I mean, I'd be laughing because Salah is the best captaincy option against Brighton at home in game week 30 alongside Heung-min Son facing Luton Town at home. But I'm still looking at buying Gusto potentially in the back line, benching Zabani or potentially Ake between those two for that final defender slot, and things are looking quite similar to how they were beforehand. But my Mohamed Salah plan would incur a -4 hit, and I would have to make some sacrifices, sell either Saka or Phil Foden, and also sell Watkins to Manice. But that would only be the case if Watkins is ruled out for game week 29 and 30, and I believe that's very unlikely to happen. So what you see on screen is really a distinct possibility, and that's only going to happen if Watkins is ruled out in the long term. And then looking at game week 31, I could wildcard, but my preference would be to save the chip for later in the season, as I'm using my free hit chip right now. It's already activated, and I'd rather space the chips a little bit further out, and also that would help me tackle double game week 34, which could include some blanks for the likes of Fulham and Tottenham Hotspur, and also be well set up for small double game weeks like 35 or 36, and of course game week 37, which will almost certainly have doubles there as well. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 23k subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, Drafthound, and also my podcast on Spotify and Amazon Music. I wish you all the best of luck for blank game week 29 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.